The way that I'm going to set this up is that every game will start at a 10 out of 10, and for every complaint I have, I'll take a point away from it. I might decide to take more than 1 point away for a complaint if I think that it's a particularly egregious one, or I might take less than a point away if I think it's a more minor complaint. It's going to be pretty arbitrary and entirely up to me, but it's mainly just going to serve as a way for me to rank games that I've played in my own head, and also to help give you guys some insight into just what I thought about the game. I will start with the good stuff. Number one, the first thing that caught my attention on the game was just how gorgeous it was. The art style is so interesting. It's almost cartoony, but in a very dark, gritty way. It's very vibrant. Everything is almost oversized and exaggerated, and that really is kind of the persona that this game has, is this sort of larger than life story, larger than life world, larger than life characters, and all of that really comes through in its art style, both being absolutely beautiful but also grotesque and just very unique on top of that. Next, I'll say the combat in this game was really good. That's one aspect of it I never really heard anyone talk about, was how good the combat was. I didn't even know there was melee combat in this game until I played it. And I wound up gravitating mostly towards melee. But the combat itself is really pretty simple. It's not a very complicated combat system, but they do come up with some pretty challenging situations to put you in. I would maybe compare the combat closest to like an Arkham style combat system, or like Spider-Man, where you're not really button mashing, but sort of that type of thing until an enemy decides to attack you, and then you react to what type of attack that they attacked you with. It's really straightforward, but also very effective. I was worried that there wouldn't be enough weapon variety or enemy variety to keep it interesting across the playthrough, but that wound up not being the case. I never got annoyed or sick of the combat throughout the entire playthrough. It stayed interesting for me. The next thing would be the characters themselves, both the bad guys and the good guys and the protagonist. They're all really fun, is the word I would use to describe them, because they're not necessarily realistic. They are very campy, and just like I was saying with the art style, the characters are very over the top. They're very eccentric, exaggerated, but that, again, is very much the style of the game, and it really works. I think that leaning into that aspect of it worked really, really well. It kept it super interesting and kept the characters really fun. Also, the world itself, and by that I more so mean the setting of Warhammer, this game does a really, really good job of introducing you to that. As somebody who knows nothing about Warhammer, I found it super easy to get engaged in this universe and in these characters and these ideas and things, because of the way that the game presents all of these concepts and different themes in a very straightforward manner, but it never lore dumps you, which is something I really, really appreciated. So one thing I was worried about was that either I would be so lost not knowing anything about Warhammer that I just wouldn't connect with it, or that they would try too hard to get me interested in Warhammer and it would lose me anyway, because it would just be mountains of dialogue. But that never did happen. They managed to keep it very interesting. From a Warhammer newbie's perspective, they managed to keep it very interesting and easy to follow, at least in terms of the plot of the game. It's very easy to keep up with and follow. Finally, for the positives, I'll just say that I never had any performance issues whatsoever. I didn't have a single frame rate issue. I didn't have a single crash. None of that. The playthrough, the recordings were at 30 FPS, but I played it at 60 on a PlayStation 5, a base model, and I never once had any issues out of the performance of the game. Through the campaign, that is. I haven't touched any of the multiplayer stuff, but through the campaign, I didn't have a single performance issue. Now on to the negatives. I'll go ahead and say up front that I don't have much to complain about with this game. I think it came through pretty well in the playthrough, but I really enjoyed it. The first thing I'll say for a negative is multiple times throughout the playthrough, I would say maybe a dozen times or so, the game would reset my loadout. So I would select the loadout I wanted to do the mission with, but then halfway through the mission, there's like a cutscene break or something. And after the cutscene, it sets me to a default loadout, which would not be the one that I had picked. That really got annoying because I was really enjoying like the hammer towards the end, and it wanted to replace it with the chainsword. Or before that, I was really liking the energy sword, and it kept replacing that with a chainsword, like mid-mission, and then I'd have to run around and look for the weapon that I wanted to use again. Or the shotgun. It just kept replacing my shotgun with different assault rifles that I didn't want to use. So that definitely did start to get annoying. And then finally, I'll say, maybe you could tie this in with a performance issue, but I wouldn't call it that. Load times. There's no sugarcoating this. This game has really fucking long load times. In fact, I might be forgetting something, but I think this is the longest load times I've had on PlayStation 5, period. Not all of them are super long. Like, the load times mid-mission, like, let's say you do a stretch of gameplay and that rolls into a cutscene, it doesn't have to load that cutscene at all. It just rolls straight in. But between missions, when you're going to and from the hub, it can take several minutes to load. At least it did for me, again, on a base model PS5. But ultimately, both of these two negatives are not super vital, in my opinion. Like, long load times, man, I remember when load times were always this long, and while it is a little bit annoying, it's just not the biggest deal in the world, especially since there are no super long load times mid-mission to take you out of the gameplay, so to speak. And then the loadouts resetting, I might have had once where one of the weapons I wanted to use got replaced, and I wasn't able to pick up the weapon I wanted to use relatively soon after that. So it's not like it was ruining my experience or anything. It's just a minor inconvenience, really, a little bit of annoyance. But neither of those are very bad. So I'm going to say I'm going to dock half a point for each of those complaints. Half a point for the loadouts resetting, half a point for the really long load times. And that means I am giving Space Marine 2 a 9 out of 10. I absolutely recommend this game. Obviously, if you're into Warhammer, you've probably already played it, but if you haven't, absolutely play it. If you don't know anything about Warhammer, I also really recommend this game. It'll do a really good job of introducing you to the world of Warhammer, and beyond that, it's just a really good video game. Anyway, I said I was going to keep it short and quick for this review, so that's going to do it here. Space Marine 2, 9 out of 10.